My name is Serafina, and 3 months ago, my father looked me dead in the eye and said those words that shattered everything I believed about family loyalty. Standing in his mahogany-paneled office, surrounded by awards bearing my sister Vivian's name, he dismissed my desperate plea for help with our family business crisis. Little did he know that his golden daughter had been systematically stealing from our company for years, leaving me to shoulder the blame for her crimes. The truth I discovered would destroy our family forever. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping family revenge story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you are ready for some serious family drama, and do not forget to subscribe, because this story has more twists than a roller coaster. Trust me, you will want to see how this sister gets exactly what she deserves. The whole nightmare began when our family's luxury event planning company Sterling Celebrations started hemorrhaging money at an alarming rate. For months, I had been working 18-hour days, trying to figure out why our accounts were consistently short, why vendors were not getting paid on time, and why several high-profile clients had mysteriously canceled their contracts. As the company's operations manager, I felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on my shoulders every single day. My sister Vivian held the prestigious title of Chief Financial Officer, a position she had secured immediately after graduating from Stanford Business School with honors. She was everything our father admired: polished, articulate, and seemingly brilliant with numbers. Meanwhile, I had chosen a different path, working my way up from the ground level, learning every aspect of the business through hands-on experience rather than textbook theories. The disparity in how our father treated us became glaringly obvious during our family meetings. Vivian would arrive in her designer suits, carrying expensive leather portfolios, and speak in corporate jargon that made our father's eyes light up with pride. When I presented my operational reports dressed in my practical business attire, he would barely glance up from his phone, dismissing my concerns with waves of his hand. The breaking point came during a particularly heated board meeting in late September. I had prepared a comprehensive presentation outlining the financial discrepancies I had been tracking, complete with vendor complaints and client feedback forms. The evidence suggested serious mismanagement in our financial department, but I needed access to the accounting records that only Vivian and our father could authorize. "Dad, we need to conduct a thorough audit of our financial systems," I pleaded, spreading the documents across the mahogany conference table. "Something is seriously wrong with our cash flow, and clients are starting to question our reliability." Vivian sat across from me, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against her iPad, a subtle smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. She had already positioned herself as the victim of my accusations, claiming that my operational incompetence was causing the problems I was trying to blame on her department. "Serafina, your sister graduated summa cum laude from one of the most prestigious business schools in the country," our father said, his voice dripping with disappointment. "She has implemented state-of-the-art financial management systems that have streamlined our operations significantly. Perhaps you should focus on improving your own performance instead of pointing fingers." The humiliation burned through my chest like acid. I had sacrificed years of my life to this company, working weekends and holidays, building relationships with vendors and clients through genuine care and dedication. Yet here I was, being dismissed like an incompetent child while my sister basked in undeserved praise. "Your sister is successful and responsible, unlike you, and does not need help managing her department." He continued, his words cutting deeper than any knife ever could. "I suggest you concentrate on learning from her example, instead of creating problems where none exist." That night, I sat in my modest apartment, staring at the stack of unpaid bills on my kitchen table. My salary barely covered my basic expenses, while Vivian lived in a penthouse downtown and drove a luxury car that cost more than I earned in 2 years. The inequality had always bothered me, but our father insisted that her strategic contributions warranted higher compensation. Unable to sleep, I decided to take a different approach to my investigation. If I could not access the official records, I would piece together the truth through other means. I started by reviewing every vendor contract, every client payment schedule, and every expense report that crossed my desk in the operations department. The pattern that emerged was both subtle and devastating. Payments to fictitious vendors inflated expense reports for business development meetings that never appeared on company calendars, and mysterious consulting fees paid to shell companies that I could not trace. The amounts were carefully calculated to stay below the threshold that would trigger automatic reviews, but when added together over 18 months, they totaled nearly $500,000. My hands trembled as I printed out the evidence, organizing it into neat folders that told a story of systematic embezzlement. But I needed more concrete proof, something that would be impossible to dismiss or explain away. That opportunity came when Vivian left for a week-long conference in Miami, conveniently scheduled during our quarterly financial review period. Using my operations access to the building security system, I waited until the office was completely empty before making my move. Vivian's office was a shrine to her supposed achievements, framed degrees, industry awards, and photographs, with influential business leaders lined every wall. Her computer was password protected, but I knew her well enough to guess her login credentials on the third try. What I found in her personal files made my stomach turn. Detailed spreadsheets tracking her theft, fake invoices for services never rendered, and email correspondence with accomplices who helped her launder money through their businesses. She had been planning this scheme since her first day on the job, systematically bleeding our family company dry while positioning herself as the responsible one. The most damning evidence was a series of text messages between Vivian and someone named Marcus discussing how to frame me for the financial problems when they became too obvious to hide. They had already prepared a narrative that would make me the scapegoat for her crimes, complete with fabricated evidence suggesting that I had been skimming money from vendor payments. As I printed out every document and saved copies to multiple flash drives, I realized that this discovery was bigger than just embezzlement. This was a calculated betrayal that went to the very core of our family relationships. Vivian had not only stolen money, she had stolen our father's trust and love, using his favoritism as a shield while she destroyed everything our family had built together. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the entire day organizing my evidence into a presentation that would expose every detail of Vivian's crimes. I knew that confronting our father directly would be useless. He would never believe me over his precious golden child. I needed to be strategic to present the truth in a way that would be impossible to deny or dismiss. But first, I needed allies. If I was going to take down someone as cunning and manipulative as Vivian, I could not do it alone. The question was, who could I trust in a family business where loyalty had already been so thoroughly corrupted? The next phase of my plan required careful timing and absolute precision. I knew that simply presenting the evidence to our father would not work. Vivian had spent years cultivating her image as the responsible daughter, and she would find a way to twist the narrative in her favor. Instead, I needed to expose her crimes in a way that would make denial impossible and force our father to confront the truth about his precious golden child. My first step was reaching out to our company's external auditor, Margaret Thornfield, a no-nonsense certified public accountant who had been reviewing our books for the past 5 years. I scheduled a private meeting under the pretense of discussing operational concerns, but my real goal was to plant seeds of doubt about our financial management practices. Margaret, I have been tracking some irregularities in our vendor payments and expense reports. I explained during our coffee meeting at a downtown cafe far from the office where Vivian might overhear. I do not have access to the complete financial records, but what I can see does not add up correctly. Margaret leaned forward, her sharp eyes focusing intently on the documents I had prepared. As someone who had built her reputation on uncovering financial fraud, she immediately recognized the red flags I was pointing out. The fake vendor invoices, the suspicious timing of payments, and the pattern of just below threshold transactions all triggered her professional instincts. "These are serious allegations, Serafina," she said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the evidence. "If what you are suggesting is accurate, we are looking at systematic embezzlement. I would need full access to your financial systems to confirm my suspicions, but this preliminary evidence is quite compelling." I knew that Margaret's involvement would lend credibility to my accusations that I could never achieve on my own. Her professional reputation and independence from our family dynamics made her the perfect ally for exposing Vivian's crimes. We agreed that she would request a comprehensive audit during the next board meeting, citing routine due diligence as the official reason. Meanwhile, I began reaching out to vendors who had been affected by Vivian's schemes. Many of them had been struggling with delayed payments and unexplained billing discrepancies, but they had been told that the problems originated in the operations department. When I explained that I was investigating financial irregularities and asked them to document their experiences, several vendors eagerly cooperated. Roberto Martinez, our primary floral supplier, had been particularly frustrated by months of payment delays. "Serafina, I have been working with your family for 8 years, and these problems only started 18 months ago," he explained during our phone conversation. "Every time I called about late payments, that sister of yours would blame operational processing delays and promise to expedite the transactions. But the payments kept getting slower and smaller." Armed with vendor testimonials and Margaret's professional backing, I prepared for the most important presentation of my life. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday, and I knew this would be my only opportunity to expose Vivian's crimes before she could discover my investigation and cover her tracks. The night before the meeting, I received an unexpected phone call from our company's insurance agent, David Park. "Serafina, I need to discuss something confidential with you," he said, his voice tight with concern. "Your sister contacted me last week asking about coverage for employee theft and embezzlement. She claimed it was routine risk assessment, but the timing and specific questions she asked have me worried." My blood ran cold as I realized what this meant. Vivian was not just stealing money. She was preparing to pin her crimes on someone else, most likely me. Her inquiry about insurance coverage suggested that she was planning to report employee theft and collect insurance money while destroying my reputation and potentially sending me to prison for crimes I did not commit. This revelation added urgency to my mission. I could not wait for the perfect moment or gather additional evidence. If I did not act immediately, Vivian would complete her framed job and escape consequences while I faced criminal charges for her embezzlement. The board meeting took place in our company's main conference room, with our father presiding over the monthly review of departmental reports. Vivian arrived looking particularly confident, carrying a thick portfolio that I suspected contained fabricated evidence designed to implicate me in financial wrongdoing. She had no idea that Margaret had already begun her preliminary audit, or that I had spent weeks building an airtight case against her. When Margaret requested permission to address the board about financial security concerns, our father seemed surprised, but agreed to hear her presentation. As she began outlining the irregularities she had discovered during her preliminary review, I watched Vivian's face carefully for any signs of panic or guilt. "Based on my initial analysis, I have identified approximately $475,000 in questionable transactions over the past 18 months. Margaret announced, projecting the evidence onto the conference room screen. "These include payments to vendors that cannot be verified expense reports for activities that do not appear in company records and a pattern of financial manipulation that suggests deliberate fraud." The room fell silent as Margaret methodically presented each piece of evidence connecting the dots between fake invoices, shell companies, and unauthorized transfers. Our father's face grew progressively paler as he realized the scope of the financial crimes that had been committed under his nose. Vivian attempted to maintain her composure, but I could see beads of sweat forming on her forehead as Margaret's presentation demolished her carefully constructed facade. When Margaret revealed the text message conversations discussing plans to frame me for the theft, Vivian finally lost her cool. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, standing up so abruptly that her chair toppled backward. Serafina has obviously fabricated this evidence because she knows her own incompetence has been causing our financial problems. She is trying to destroy my reputation to cover up her own failures. But Margaret was ready for this response. She calmly displayed bank records showing deposits into Vivian's personal accounts that corresponded exactly with the missing company funds, along with luxury purchase receipts that proved she had been living far beyond her official salary. Our father sat in stunned silence as the full magnitude of Vivian's betrayal became undeniable. The daughter he had praised and favored, the one he had held up as an example of success and responsibility, had been systematically destroying the family business while manipulating him into blaming me for her crimes. "Dad," I said quietly, my voice steady, despite the emotional turmoil raging inside me. "I tried to tell you something was wrong. I brought you evidence months ago, but you chose to believe her lies instead of investigating the truth. This is not just about stolen money. This is about how she manipulated our entire family to cover up her crimes." The meeting ended with our father authorizing a full forensic audit and immediately suspending Vivian from all financial responsibilities. But I knew this was just the beginning of a much larger battle that would tear our family apart and force everyone to choose sides. The aftermath of Margaret's explosive revelation created immediate chaos within our family business and personal relationships. Within 24 hours of the board meeting, word of the embezzlement scandal had spread through our industry network like wildfire. Vendors, clients, and employees were all demanding answers about the financial irregularities and questioning whether Sterling Celebrations could survive such a massive breach of trust. Our father, still reeling from the shock of discovering his favorite daughter's crimes, went into complete damage control mode. He hired Reynolds and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms specializing in corporate fraud cases, and authorized them to work closely with Margaret on a comprehensive forensic audit. The investigation would examine every financial transaction from the past 3 years, leaving no stone unturned in mapping the full extent of Vivian's embezzlement scheme. However, I quickly realized that exposing Vivian's crimes was only the first step in a much more complex battle. She was not going to accept defeat quietly, and her next moves proved that she was willing to destroy our entire family to avoid facing consequences for her actions. 2 days after the board meeting, I received a certified letter from Hamilton and Cross, an equally prestigious law firm representing Vivian. The letter accused me of malicious defamation, conspiracy to commit fraud, and intentional interference with business relationships. According to their legal filing, I had fabricated evidence against Vivian to cover up my own embezzlement and was using Margaret's audit as a smokescreen for my crimes. The letter also revealed that Vivian had retained Marcus Williams, the same person mentioned in her text messages about framing me. It turned out that Marcus was not just an accomplice in her money laundering scheme. He was also a forensic accountant who specialized in creating fake evidence for white-collar crime cases. Together, they had prepared an alternative narrative that portrayed me as the mastermind behind the financial fraud, and Vivian as an innocent victim who had discovered my crimes. This development forced me to realize that I needed more than just evidence and professional allies. I needed a strong legal team and people who could help me navigate the complex web of manipulation that Vivian was weaving. My modest savings account would not be sufficient to match the legal firepower she could afford with her stolen money, so I had to get creative about building my defense network. My first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, our company's business psychologist, who provided consultation on employee relations and workplace dynamics, reached out to me after hearing about the embezzlement investigation. She had been conducting routine employee satisfaction surveys and exit interviews for the past 2 years, and several patterns in her data suddenly made sense in light of Vivian's crimes. Serafina, I have been tracking unusual turnover rates in departments that interacted closely with financial operations, Elena explained during our confidential meeting in her downtown office. Several employees left the company citing concerns about ethical violations and financial irregularities, but they were afraid to report their suspicions officially because Vivian had cultivated such a positive reputation with your father. Elena's employee interviews revealed a pattern of intimidation and manipulation that Vivian had used to silence potential whistleblowers. She had positioned herself as the protector of employee interests while simultaneously threatening anyone who questioned her methods. This psychological manipulation had been crucial to maintaining her cover for so long. Through Elena's network of professional contacts, I connected with Sarah Chen, an investigative journalist who specialized in corporate fraud cases. Sarah had built her career exposing white-collar criminals who used family businesses as their personal piggy banks, and she was immediately interested in documenting Vivian's elaborate scheme. "This case has all the elements of a major exposé," Sarah explained during our first interview. "Family favoritism, systematic embezzlement, psychological manipulation, and attempted frame jobs. But I need more than just financial evidence. I need to understand the human story behind these crimes. How did your sister become capable of such calculated betrayal?" Working with Sarah opened up new avenues for gathering evidence that the legal and financial investigations had missed. Through her contacts in the banking industry, we discovered that Vivian had opened accounts at 3 different banks using slightly modified versions of our company's information. These accounts had been receiving fraudulent transfers for over 2 years, and the banks had never flagged them because the amounts and timing were carefully designed to avoid triggering automated fraud detection systems. Sarah's investigation also uncovered something that chilled me to the bone. Vivian had been building her embezzlement scheme since college, using internship positions at other companies to practice and refine her methods. She had left a trail of small-scale fraud at 4 different businesses before joining our family company. But the amounts had been too small, and the companies too embarrassed to pursue criminal charges. Meanwhile, Margaret's forensic audit was revealing the true scope of Vivian's crimes. The initial estimate of $475,000 proved to be conservative. The actual amount stolen exceeded $700,000 when they factored in interest fees and indirect costs. The money had been funneled through a network of shell companies and cryptocurrency exchanges before being converted into luxury purchases and real estate investments. The most devastating discovery came when Margaret traced some of the stolen funds to a business loan application that Vivian had submitted using our company as collateral. She had been planning to establish her own event planning company using money embezzled from Sterling celebrations, effectively stealing our client base and vendor relationships while bankrupting the family business that had provided her with the opportunity to commit these crimes. This revelation finally broke through our father's denial about Vivian's character. The idea that she had been planning to destroy our family legacy while pretending to be the responsible daughter was too much for him to rationalize or excuse. During a private meeting in his office, surrounded by the same awards and photographs that had once symbolized his pride in her achievements, he finally acknowledged the full extent of her betrayal. "Serafina, I owe you an apology that I can never adequately express," he said, his voice hollow with grief and regret. "I allowed my favoritism and pride to blind me to the truth about your sister's character. Worse than that, I blamed you for problems that she was deliberately creating. I failed as a father and as a business owner." His admission was emotionally satisfying, but it came with a sobering reality: our family business was in serious financial jeopardy. The stolen money represented a significant portion of our operating capital, and the scandal was causing clients to cancel contracts and vendors to demand immediate payment for outstanding invoices. We needed to find a way to recover financially, while simultaneously pursuing justice against Vivian. This crisis brought me closer to Roberto Martinez, our primary floral supplier, who had suffered significant losses due to Vivian's payment delays. Instead of demanding immediate compensation that we could not afford, Roberto proposed a partnership arrangement that would help stabilize our vendor relationships while giving him a stake in our company's recovery. Your family gave my business its first major break 8 years ago, Roberto explained during our negotiation meeting. I am not going to abandon you now because of what that sister of yours did, but I need assurance that these problems will never happen again, and I want to be involved in rebuilding Sterling Celebrations the right way. Roberto's loyalty inspired other vendors to propose similar arrangements, creating a network of business allies who had a vested interest in our company's survival and success. These relationships became crucial when Vivian's legal team began contacting our vendors and clients, trying to convince them that I was the real culprit behind the financial fraud. As the various investigations progressed and our alliance network strengthened, I began to feel cautiously optimistic about our chances of surviving Vivian's attacks and rebuilding our business on a foundation of genuine integrity. But I had underestimated my sister's ruthlessness and her willingness to destroy everything and everyone to avoid facing consequences for her crimes. The next phase of her counterattack would test every relationship I had built and force me to question whether justice was really possible when facing someone who had no moral boundaries. Just when I thought we had built an unshakable foundation for exposing Vivian's crimes and rebuilding our company, the most devastating betrayal came from within our own alliance. The person I had trusted most, the one who had provided crucial evidence for our case, turned out to be working with Vivian all along. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been feeding information about our investigation strategy directly to Vivian's legal team while pretending to support our efforts. The realization hit me like a physical blow when Sarah Chin discovered encrypted email communications between Elena and Marcus Williams, revealing that Elena had been planted in our company specifically to gather intelligence about potential threats to Vivian's embezzlement scheme. The discovery came too late. Elena had already provided Vivian's team with copies of all the employee testimonies, details about our legal strategy, and most damaging of all, information about the additional evidence we were still gathering. Armed with this inside knowledge, Vivian's lawyers launched a preemptive strike that nearly destroyed everything we had worked to build. On a cold Monday morning in November, I arrived at our office to find federal investigators seizing all of our computer equipment and financial records. They had obtained a warrant based on Elena's fabricated testimony claiming that I had been using the embezzlement investigation to cover up my own money laundering operation. According to Elena's sworn statement, I had been working with Roberto Martinez to create fake vendor invoices that diverted company funds into accounts we controlled jointly. The timing of this raid was strategically calculated to cause maximum damage. Several of our biggest clients were scheduled to attend planning meetings that week for their spring events, and the sight of federal agents carrying boxes of evidence out of our office sent panic through our customer base. Within hours, we lost 3 major contracts worth over $200,000 in revenue. Roberto was devastated by Elena's accusations against him. As someone who had immigrated to this country and built his business through decades of honest work, the suggestion that he was involved in money laundering threatened not just his livelihood, but his entire family's future. The stress of the investigation caused him to have a mild heart attack, landing him in the hospital and effectively removing our strongest vendor ally from the battlefield. Serafina, I cannot afford to have my name associated with this scandal, Roberto said weakly from his hospital bed, surrounded by worried family members. My children's futures depend on my reputation in this community. I have to distance my business from Sterling Celebrations until this investigation is resolved. The loss of Roberto's support created a domino effect among our other vendor allies. Without his leadership and credibility, the partnership network we had built began to crumble. Other vendors started demanding immediate payment for outstanding invoices, and several threatened to sue us for breach of contract if we could not meet their terms. Margaret Thornfield, our external auditor, also found herself under intense scrutiny. Vivian's legal team had filed complaints with the state accounting board claiming that Margaret had accepted bribes from me to fabricate evidence against Vivian. While these accusations were completely false, they forced Margaret to recuse herself from our case to avoid potential conflicts of interest that could damage her professional reputation. The psychological impact of these setbacks was almost unbearable. I had spent months building what I thought was an impenetrable case against Vivian, only to watch it collapse because I had trusted someone who was working against me from the beginning. The feeling of betrayal was compounded by the knowledge that Elena had been studying my behavior and emotional responses specifically to identify weaknesses that could be exploited. During this dark period, my father's faith in my innocence began to waver. The federal investigation and Elena's convincing testimony created enough reasonable doubt to make him question whether his initial judgment about Vivian's guilt had been correct. The constant pressure from Vivian's lawyers combined with the stress of watching our business collapse wore down his resolve to support me unconditionally. "Serafina, I need you to be completely honest with me," he said during a painful conversation in his study. "Is there any possibility that you were involved in financial irregularities, even if your intentions were good? Elena's testimony is very detailed and specific, and the federal investigators seem convinced that there's substance to their case against you." His doubt felt like a knife through my heart. After everything we had discovered about Vivian's crimes, after all the evidence Margaret had uncovered, my own father was questioning my integrity based on fabricated accusations from a traitor who had infiltrated our investigation. This moment represented the lowest point of my entire ordeal. Vivian sensed that her counterattack was succeeding and became bolder in her efforts to destroy me completely. She began giving interviews to industry publications, portraying herself as a victim of workplace harassment and family dysfunction. According to her narrative, I had been jealous of her success and had manufactured the embezzlement allegations to turn our father against her. I tried to help my sister develop better business skills, but she became increasingly resentful of my education and professional achievements, Vivian told Business Today magazine. When her operational failures started causing serious problems for our company, she created this elaborate conspiracy theory to shift blame away from herself. The article included quotes from Elena supporting Vivian's version of events, along with carefully edited excerpts from employee interviews that made me appear incompetent and vindictive. The publication had a wide circulation in our industry, and the article did significant damage to what remained of my professional reputation. As if the external attacks were not enough, I also discovered that Elena had been providing Vivian with psychological profiles of all our family members, including detailed analyses of our father's personality weaknesses and emotional triggers. This information had allowed Vivian to manipulate his responses throughout the investigation, playing on his guilt about favoritism while simultaneously reinforcing his natural tendency to doubt difficult accusations. The most crushing revelation was that Elena had been recording our private conversations and providing edited transcripts to Vivian's legal team. Comments I had made expressing frustration with our father's favoritism or anger about Vivian's crimes had been taken out of context and presented as evidence of my supposed vindictive motivations. Standing in my empty apartment, surrounded by legal documents and mounting bills I could not afford to pay, I realized that Vivian had successfully isolated me from almost every ally I had built. The investigation that was supposed to expose her crimes had been turned against me, and she was closer than ever to completely escaping consequences while destroying my life in the process. But even in this darkest hour, I refused to give up. Somewhere out there was evidence that could prove Elena's betrayal and expose the sophisticated frame job that Vivian had orchestrated. I just needed to find one person who could not be bought, threatened, or manipulated into abandoning the truth. When hope seemed completely lost and Vivian appeared to have successfully destroyed my credibility, salvation came from an entirely unexpected source. The breakthrough that would ultimately expose Elena's betrayal and vindicate my accusations against Vivian emerged through a connection I had never anticipated: my former college roommate, Jessica Walsh, who had become a cybersecurity specialist for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Jessica reached out to me after reading about the Sterling Celebrations case in the Financial Crime Division's weekly briefing. Something about the pattern of evidence tampering and coordinated character assassination had triggered her professional instincts, reminding her of other cases involving sophisticated white-collar criminals who used psychological manipulation as part of their criminal enterprises. Serafina, the way this investigation has unfolded does not match typical embezzlement cases, Jessica explained during our secret meeting at a coffee shop downtown. The level of coordination between multiple parties, the timing of the counter-accusations, and the sophisticated nature of the evidence fabrication suggests that we are dealing with professionals who have experience manipulating federal investigations. Jessica's involvement changed everything because she had access to federal databases and investigative tools that were not available to our private legal team. Within days of beginning her unofficial investigation, she had uncovered digital evidence that Elena had been communicating with known associates of Marcus Williams for over 6 months before she ever contacted our company about providing psychological consultation services. The digital forensics revealed that Elena's entire professional relationship with Sterling Celebrations had been orchestrated as part of Vivian's long-term strategy to protect herself from potential discovery. Elena had been specifically recruited because of her expertise in workplace psychology and her ability to gain the trust of employees who might become whistleblowers. More damaging evidence emerged when Jessica traced the encrypted communications between Elena and Marcus Williams back to a secure server that had been used in previous corporate fraud cases. The server contained detailed psychological profiles of dozens of potential witnesses and victims, along with strategic plans for discrediting anyone who threatened their various criminal enterprises. Elena Rodriguez is not just a corrupt psychologist, Jessica revealed during our second meeting. She is part of a sophisticated criminal network that specializes in protecting white-collar criminals from prosecution. They have been running similar operations at companies across the country, using psychological manipulation and evidence fabrication to help embezzlers and fraudsters escape justice. This revelation recontextualized everything that had happened during our investigation. Vivian had not just been stealing money. She had been part of a much larger criminal conspiracy that provided specialized services to help corporate criminals avoid prosecution. Elena's betrayal was not a personal failing, but evidence of a professional criminal operation that threatened the integrity of the entire justice system. Jessica's federal resources allowed us to recover digital evidence that Elena thought she had permanently deleted. The recovered files included detailed instructions from Marcus Williams about how to manipulate the federal investigation, along with transcripts of conversations where Elena bragged about successfully turning me into a scapegoat for Vivian's crimes. One particularly damning recording captured Elena's conversation with an unknown male voice, discussing how to neutralize the sisters' credibility permanently through a combination of fabricated evidence and psychological manipulation. The casual way they discussed destroying my life and reputation revealed the cold professionalism of people who had perfected these techniques through years of practice. Armed with this federal-level evidence, Jessica was able to approach the investigators who had raided our office and present proof that they had been manipulated into pursuing the wrong target. The lead investigator, Agent Patricia Morrison, was initially skeptical, but became increasingly convinced as Jessica presented the digital evidence showing Elena's criminal connections and history of evidence fabrication. "Ms. Sterling, we owe you a significant apology," Agent Morrison said during our formal meeting at the federal building. "Our investigation was compromised from the beginning by false information provided by someone we believed to be a credible witness. We are now treating Dr. Rodriguez as a subject of our investigation rather than a cooperating witness." The federal investigation's reversal created a cascade of positive developments that rapidly dismantled Vivian's carefully constructed defense. With Elena's credibility destroyed and her criminal connections exposed, the fabricated evidence against me collapsed under scrutiny. Federal investigators began focusing their attention on the real criminals, Vivian Marcus Williams, and the entire network of professionals who had been helping corporate embezzlers escape justice. Roberto Martinez's vindication was particularly satisfying. When federal investigators revealed that Elena had fabricated the accusations against him, Roberto's reputation was not only restored, but enhanced by his willingness to stand by our company during its darkest hours. His heart attack, caused by the stress of false accusations, became evidence of the real human cost of Vivian's criminal conspiracy. Serafina, I never doubted your integrity, even when the federal investigators made their accusations, Roberto said during his first day back at work after recovering from his heart attack. My family knows honest people when we meet them, and we could see that you were fighting for what was right, even when it cost you everything. Roberto's return to our alliance brought other vendors back into our support network, creating a stronger foundation for rebuilding Sterling celebrations than we had ever possessed before. The vendors who had abandoned us during the federal investigation returned with apologies and renewed commitments, recognizing that their hasty departure had been based on manipulated information rather than legitimate concerns. Margaret Thornfield was also vindicated when federal investigators confirmed that the complaints against her professional conduct had been fabricated using forged documents and false testimony. Her reputation as one of the city's most trusted auditors was not only restored, but enhanced by her principled decision to recuse herself from our case when her integrity was questioned. The most powerful new ally emerged when Sarah Chen's investigative reporting attracted the attention of David Goldberg, a prominent attorney who specialized in representing victims of sophisticated financial fraud. David had built his career taking on cases that other lawyers considered too complex or dangerous, and he was immediately interested in pursuing justice against the criminal network that had targeted our family. This case represents everything that is wrong with our current approach to white-collar crime prosecution, David explained during our initial consultation. Criminals like your sister and her associates are able to operate with impunity because they have developed sophisticated methods for manipulating the justice system itself. We need to send a clear message that these tactics will not be tolerated. David's involvement brought resources and expertise that transformed our legal position from defensive to offensive. Instead of simply trying to prove my innocence, we were now actively pursuing criminal charges against everyone involved in the conspiracy to defraud our company and manipulate the federal investigation. The momentum had completely shifted in our favor, and Vivian's network of criminal allies was beginning to turn against each other as federal investigators closed in on their operations. The final collapse of Vivian's criminal enterprise happened with breathtaking speed once federal investigators began unraveling the full extent of the conspiracy. Within 2 weeks of Jessica's intervention, the entire network of professionals who had been helping corporate embezzlers escape justice found themselves facing serious federal charges. Elena Rodriguez was arrested first, caught attempting to flee the country, with over $200,000 in cash that investigators traced directly to payments from Marcus Williams. Her arrest led to the seizure of computer servers containing evidence of similar fraud operations at 17 other companies across 6 states. The psychological manipulation techniques she had perfected were finally being used against legitimate criminals instead of innocent victims. Marcus Williams was arrested the following day when federal agents raided his forensic accounting firm and discovered a sophisticated evidence fabrication laboratory. The facility contained specialized equipment for creating fake documents, altering digital records, and producing convincing forgeries that could fool even experienced investigators. His arrest revealed that he had been providing these services to white-collar criminals for over 8 years, helping dozens of embezzlers and fraudsters escape prosecution. Vivian's arrest was particularly satisfying because it happened during a television interview where she was attempting to portray herself as a victim of family dysfunction and workplace harassment. Federal agents interrupted the live broadcast to place her in handcuffs, creating a dramatic moment that was replayed on news channels throughout the region. The image of her being led away in custody while still wearing her designer suit became a symbol of how privilege and manipulation could not protect criminals from the consequences of their actions. The federal investigation ultimately recovered over $900,000 in stolen assets, including money that had been laundered through cryptocurrency exchanges and hidden in offshore accounts. The recovered funds were sufficient to restore Sterling Celebration's financial stability and compensate the vendors who had suffered losses due to Vivian's payment delays. More importantly, the investigation exposed the psychological manipulation techniques that had allowed Vivian to maintain her facade of respectability for so long. Federal prosecutors used our case as a model for training other investigators to recognize the warning signs of sophisticated corporate fraud conspiracies that rely on character assassination and evidence fabrication to protect the real criminals. My father's transformation during this final phase was perhaps the most meaningful aspect of the entire ordeal. Witnessing the full extent of Vivian's manipulation and the sophisticated nature of her criminal conspiracy forced him to confront his own role in enabling her crimes through favoritism and willful blindness. Serafina, I realize now that my favoritism was not just unfair to you personally, he said during one of our long conversations about rebuilding our family relationships. It created an environment where criminal behavior could flourish because I was too proud to question the daughter who made me feel successful as a parent. I failed both of you in different ways, but my failure to protect you from Vivian's manipulation is something I will regret for the rest of my life. His acknowledgement of past mistakes led to substantive changes in how Sterling Celebrations operated as a family business. We implemented new oversight procedures that prevented any single person from having unchecked control over financial operations, and we established an independent board of directors that included Roberto Martinez and other longtime business partners who had proven their integrity during our crisis. The rebuilding process also strengthened my relationships with the allies who had stood by me during the darkest periods of the investigation. Roberto Martinez became more than just a vendor. He became a mentor and friend who taught me valuable lessons about maintaining integrity under pressure and building business relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial convenience. Sarah Chen's investigative reporting about our case won several journalism awards and led to federal legislation requiring more stringent oversight of forensic accounting firms and business psychology consultants. Her continued friendship provided me with a connection to the broader community of people fighting against corporate corruption and white-collar crime. Jessica Walsh's involvement in our case became a turning point in her own career, leading to her promotion within the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, and her selection to lead a new task force focused on sophisticated corporate fraud conspiracies. Our renewed friendship reminded me of the importance of maintaining connections with people who share fundamental values about honesty and justice. David Goldberg's successful prosecution of the criminal network attracted national attention and established new legal precedents for holding accountable the professionals who enable white-collar criminals. His mentorship helped me understand how the legal system can be used effectively to protect honest people from sophisticated criminal conspiracies. Perhaps most surprisingly, I developed a meaningful relationship with Agent Patricia Morrison, the federal investigator who had initially pursued charges against me based on Elena's fabricated evidence. Her professional integrity and willingness to acknowledge mistakes when presented with new evidence restored my faith in the justice system's ability to correct course when dedicated professionals are involved. These relationships became the foundation of what I now consider my chosen family people, who are connected not by blood or obligation, but by shared values and mutual support through difficult challenges. The contrast between this chosen family and the biological family that had enabled Vivian's crimes highlighted how genetic relationships mean nothing without trust, respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Sterling Celebrations not only survived the crisis, but emerged stronger than ever before. Our reputation for integrity earned through surviving such a serious test attracted new clients who specifically wanted to work with a company that had proven its commitment to honest business practices. The publicity from our case, while initially challenging, ultimately became a powerful marketing tool that differentiated us from competitors who had never faced similar tests of their character. The personal growth I experienced during this ordeal taught me valuable lessons about resilience, the importance of building genuine relationships, and the power of persistence in pursuing justice. The experience of being betrayed by someone I trusted helped me develop better judgment about people's motivations and character, while the support I received from unexpected allies reminded me that good people exist in every profession and community. Today, 3 years after Vivian's arrest, she remains in federal prison serving a 12-year sentence for conspiracy, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Elena Rodriguez received an 8-year sentence and is banned from practicing psychology in any state. Marcus Williams received the longest sentence of 15 years and was ordered to pay restitution to all the victims his evidence fabrication enterprise had harmed over the years. Their convictions sent a clear message to other potential white-collar criminals that sophisticated manipulation techniques and professional networks cannot protect them from the consequences of their actions when honest people refuse to give up the fight for justice. I have learned that family betrayal, while devastating, can also be an opportunity to build something better than what existed before. The chosen family I have built through this experience is stronger and more trustworthy than the biological family that allowed favoritism and manipulation to flourish for so long. Justice was not just served through criminal convictions. It was served through the restoration of truth, the vindication of honest people who had been wrongly accused, and the creation of new systems that protect against similar crimes in the future. Have you ever experienced family betrayal that forced you to question everything you believed about blood loyalty? Have you found that sometimes the family you choose can be more trustworthy than the family you were born into? I would love to hear your stories about overcoming family drama and finding justice when the odds seemed impossible. Please share your experiences in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story resonated with your own struggles, and subscribe for more real-life stories about karma justice and the power of standing up for what is right. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that sometimes the most painful betrayals can lead to the strongest foundations for a better future. Keep fighting for the truth, and never let anyone convince you to doubt your own integrity when you know you are standing on the right side of justice.